The casualty rates inflicted by the Zelax on the Confederation have left an indelible mark on all of us. In each encounter, entire army groups were decimated within hours, overwhelmed by the relentless onslaught. Their bio-titan weaponry tore through our armor divisions, reducing them to nothing. Garrisons were obliterated by wave after wave of their relentless warrior forms, and our fleets were shredded in orbit, their once proud ships reduced to scrap. The Zelax show no mercy and entertain no diplomacy beyond the utter surrender of their prey. They harvest biological materials to fuel their own grotesque creations. Their tactics are ruthless. Psychotropic gases, terror tactics, targeting civilians and the wounded, all designed to instill maximum fear and despair. When we heard that humanity would join the fight, there was skepticism. What difference could one more fledgling race make against such a relentless foe? Would they merely delay the inevitable, offering only fleeting moments for evacuation? Morale sank, and barracks buzzed with grim predictions of how long humanity would last before retreating, how many lives they would sacrifice in vain. The atmosphere was as grim as our prospects for survival. And then humanity arrived. The Zelax launched their first ground assault on Copernicus, and the 17th Army Group was tasked with holding the line, buying time at any cost. We received reinforcements from humanity, a group known as the Fifth Order, led by a seasoned commander from their past conflicts. We cared little for their titles or history, though I suspect the Zelax cared even less, at least initially. For those fortunate enough to have never witnessed the horror of the Zelax in battle, I envy you, my comrades. They are abominations of nature. While our research suggests they are heavily genetically modified from an era predating the Confederation on that fateful day, we cared little for their origins. They swarmed us with their infantry, grotesque bioforms crafted from the biological essence of their victims, each one a twisted amalgam of flesh and bone, weaponized and augmented for war. Behind them loomed their spider tanks and massive super-heavy armor, effortlessly crushing the terrain on anti-gravity engines. Even their lightest vehicles outmatched our most formidable defenses. Their bio-titans strode through our ranks, decimating entire battalions single-handedly. Their ships rained merciless orbital bombardments, indifferent to collateral damage among friend and foe alike. To them, we were mere fodder, raw material to harvest for their relentless war machine. They move forward non-stop. Their weapons fire jets of corrosive acid that destroy tanks and bunkers, along with jets of catalytic energy that melt flesh and bone into boiling floods. They also carry sharp and customized bio-enhanced bone arms, such as saw blades, spikes, and beating chambers, to kill, harvest, and devour flesh. I have seen too many close friends seriously injured to understand the dangers and the impossibility of defense. Yet the lives of 20 million creatures depend on us holding our ground. And so we fought. We fought with heavy armor fixed behind defensive positions and plasma screens, with enough artillery to destroy mountains and giant warlocks that towered over the buildings of the cities we defended. An alliance of hundreds of species prepares for war, armed with plasma and laser weapons, wearing servo armor, burrowing and readying positions. The fight started at 7:12 local time. By 8:23, our horizons began to tilt. At 9:01, the perimeter broke, lasting only 10 minutes longer than the most optimistic predictions. At 9:02, I broke protocol and chain of command to implore the humans to send whatever was available to the spaceport to protect as many civilians as possible. I'm sure you've all read the transcript of my deposition. Yes, I shot my superior because he refused to go back on his word and ask for help. Yes, I have no regrets. The response from the humans came swiftly at 9:03, broadcasted openly for all to hear. Understood, Agita Command. Starfall has been authorized. Knights on their way. Look to the heavens. We are coming. I turned my gaze skyward. The term knight was unfamiliar. The translator offered a simplistic definition, mounted soldier in armor. But in that moment, its deeper meaning as someone devoted to a cause resonated powerfully. Yet at that critical juncture, semantics mattered little. Then, I witnessed it. Have any of you ever witnessed a true meteor shower? Not the simulated ones in entertainment, but the real celestial spectacle. What unfolded before me mirrored that rare phenomenon. Hundreds of points of fiery light streaked across the sky, descending like a rain of legends from an era long past. They seemed so few, so fragile, and yet they ignited a flame within us. These beings had committed themselves willingly, plunging into the fray as if they were from the tales of ancient heroes. Their arrival infused my weary troops with renewed determination. They dug in, refusing to yield another inch until the humans arrived. The humans had come to stand with us, to face death alongside us. The least we could do was fight to survive until they reached us. I managed to stabilize our lines and contain the Zelax in several breaches across the perimeter. When the human commander requested coordinates for what he termed nightfall, I didn't comprehend its significance, but I provided the locations of the breaches without hesitation. "Understood," he said, laughing, perhaps at the sheer suicidal nature of our situation. "Brace for impact and clear the splash area. Tyrannies incoming." I laughed too. Splash area? What were tyrannies? I had no idea, and at that moment I didn't care. We were fully engaged with enemy armor, and my forces were starting to crumble. I rushed to reinforce the breaking points with everything I had left. I remember the Zelax spider tank crawling over the wall at Breach 6, covered in warrior forms and bristling with weaponry. Its thick arachnid legs hauled it over the wall as it spewed fire and death. I fired my pistol because what else could I do? Helixians and Tanithians were at my side, firing all they had at the beast's thick hide. We weren't even scratching it, having run out of proper anti-armor 10 minutes earlier. The previous tank had been taken down on the other side of the wall by a madly brave private who had jumped on it and detonated 2 full belts of grenades. We didn't have any more madly brave privates, and even if we did, we were out of grenades of that yield. The tank fired its main plasma accelerator at a squad to my left, reducing them to half-melted corpses, then turned its attention back to us. I wondered what death would feel like, and if there really was something after it. Then came the sound. A shrieking that turned into the roaring of some death-world beast, evoking primal images of scales, claws, fire, and wings blotting out the sun. They landed right on the tank. The shockwave was brutal, throwing me to the ground and scattering the warrior forms on the tank. The tank buckled and collapsed, its armor cracked and shattered, fluids and blood oozing from the impact zones. An eerie silence filled the breach for a moment. I managed to get up and looked around. Had a lucky orbital round from our fleet struck? An unlucky shot from theirs? Space debris? My answer emerged from the smoke. There were 5 of them, only 5, yet they felt like an entire army. Clad head to toe in sleek black armor, they towered over any Phylixian or Oropero, resembling mythical gods. Their armor was adorned with marks and sigils that I didn't understand then, and some I still don't. But there was one symbol I did recognize, the mark of leadership. The first of the figures wore holographic armor over its power plate, displaying a bright orange flying quadruped reptilian with open wings, a storm raging behind it. Its helmet mirrored this image, shaped like the head of the reptile, with visor lenses glowing beneath the snout of the beast. The ears of the helmet flourished into wings of office. Its deep orange cape fluttered lazily in the wind. Yes, it had a cape, an actual cape on a battlefield. I remember thinking it seemed ridiculous once the battle was over. But in that moment, it gave them an aura of mythical might, as if they had stepped out of a children's fairy tale to slay every monster from beyond the stars, deeming the Zelax worthy of their wrath. And the strangest thing, it wasn't the cape, the decorated armor, or how they had reached us. It was their weapons. They had shoulder-mounted ordnance and weapons slung on their lower backs, but their hands held no rifles or long guns, only blades, hammers, and daggers. The leader, the reptile-decorated warrior, wielded 2 long blades, one in each hand. Another of the group, with a roaring golden feline on its chest and the same storm behind it, carried a breaching axe that looked like an alien version of those used by our firefighters, far more deadly in appearance. The third, a giant even among its peers, towered over the others, wielding a brutal 2-handed hammer with a head resembling some type of canid. On its chest was the same canid, standing howling on a massive pillar, with the storm raging behind it. The fourth one was comparatively shorter, crouching over a fallen warrior form and poking it with one of its many knives. This one's armor was decorated with bones and feathers, making it look like the devil from some primitive tale. Though the others were intimidating, this one seemed purpose-built for it. A collar of teeth encircled its neck, and it appeared to be trying to carve pieces from the dead warrior form until it noticed the living ones around. The last one was also smaller, but taller than the previous. Its armor displayed a blue tree standing proud amidst a storm, and in its hands, to my relief, was an actual weapon. A long-barreled, scoped rifle. For a few moments, no one moved. Then the reptile warrior spoke through open channels and speakers. "The laws of chivalry demand of me to give you a chance for surrender or retreat from this world. The offer is made. Choose quickly or face Jovian wrath." It took me one insane second to realize it was making the offer to the Zelax. One insane moment of wondering who would be so foolish to make such an offer to a species bent on exterminating and incorporating every biological life form. Predictably, the Zelax opened fire. Then, the true carnage began. After what felt like an hour of constant fire but was only mere seconds, the Zelax paused, surveying what was left of the 5 humans. Through the smoke, the same voice spoke again. "We will take that as a polite thank you, but no. Tyranny, Amaranth, cleanse them all." Then came the hypervelocity slugs. I had seen railguns fire before, from cruisers and heavy tanks, but never from a shoulder mount. Like blue fire, razor-sharp slugs of metal tore enemy warrior forms from their feet, ripping them apart into chunks of flesh. One volley, 5 knights, 24 dead warrior forms. I still can't believe it. From the smoke where they had vanished, they charged forth into melee. It seemed even more suicidal than offering the Zelax terms of surrender. I fully expected those hulking flesh minters to tear those 5 apart. It was then I understood what the word knight truly meant. A mounted warrior in armor devoted to a cause. Earth, their homeworld, is a death world, but we never saw anything particularly dangerous there. Sure, there were some impressive fauna and flora and dangerous creatures that could kill with a mere touch. But the reason it was a death world was the humans themselves. While not physically impressive, at least not more than our fitter races, they had 2 dangerous gifts. One was their nearly limitless creativity and determination to keep moving forward. They did not relent or retreat if they could achieve something. In that aspect, they seemed impressive and even laudable. The second part was their psionic gift. I'm sure most of you have heard the rumors that humanity experimented on itself to achieve a sort of transcendence into the field of psionics. It is true, confirmed to me by their high-ranking officers, and an open truth among their people and society. They possess wondrous abilities like telepathic communication, enhancing their own speed and physical might, and much more. I lied before, Senators. They have another gift, although I would prefer to call it a curse. They can apply anything to war, and their psionics are no exception. Their armor is linked to their very, I hesitate to use such an archaic term as soul, but that is what they call it. Weapons powered by their minds cut through reinforced ship plating with ease. They can make things combust spontaneously, cast actual lightning from their hands. They can fly. Actually fly. I barely saw the reptile warrior when he shot forward on some sort of anti-gravity harness, achieving a degree of mobility that seemed almost magical. He cut, shredded, and vivisected Zelax warriors like paper. His shield shimmered with a protective aura every time he slowed enough for me to catch a glimpse of his movements, though no shot found him. At range, he was deceptively deadly with his shoulder-mounted cannon and the weapon slung at his hip. A sort of assault rifle that accelerated projectiles to a percentage of the speed of light, making short work of the warrior forms. But up close? Had we been an inferior race that believed in supernatural creatures, I might have compared them to gods of death. The humans had their own comparison. They called them angels of death. It was a fitting nickname. I saw the one with a hammer crush tanks with it. The sniper shoot leader forms from impossible ranges. The lion warrior with his axe carve open transports and tear them to shreds. The one adorned in feathers sliced through Zelax warriors like animals, searching for weak spots and instilling the fear of humanity in them. 5 human knights. That was all it took to hold that breach, and they deployed a full 100 of them to aid us. It was like witnessing veritable myths, the speed, power, and ferocity of them. how they seemed to know exactly where enemy fire would come from before it actually came, how they read each other and dealt with threats. I saw a knight cut the turret off an enemy tank and fire his gun inside, while two of his companions eliminated commander forms rushing him. In perfect synchronization, they moved and killed. When united in those 5-soldier teams, those tyrannies, they became whirlwinds of death. The reptile warrior, he killed so many Zelax warriors, commanders, and armor that when he rushed back among the last of his kin to enter the evacuation vessels, he was so covered in blood, oil, and radioactive dust that his engineers had to cut him out of the armor. And he seemed pleased by it. They all did. They joked, laughed, and shared feats once we were in transit. I had the pleasure, I suppose, to travel on one human cruiser whose name I will never forget, the Reign of Vengeance. The crew held particular pride in those men, as if they were some sort of symbol of humanity. They acted like it, always proud, always determined. Every time they entered a room, the sailors would salute and stand to attention, even if, by my understanding, they didn't have to. I asked why. A commander of an infantry unit named Alistair Whiteborn explained it to me. These knights are among the most gifted psionics of humanity, trained to the breaking point to form a corps of enhanced super soldiers capable of facing any threat in packs of 5. These packs are called tyrannies because an ancient predator from human myth, something called a dragon, formed packs that were called tyrannies. These tyrannies formed wings, which then formed flights, and those formed thunders. I asked why they called them thunders. The reptile warrior, who I later learned was named Cyrus Amaranth from Europa, a satellite around their gas giant Jupiter, explained it to me. Ever heard the sound of almost 100 knights flying through the air? It's the thunder that is heralded by the coming lightning, and as such, we are only heard after we have already struck. We didn't win that battle. They didn't have the men or supplies to maintain a prolonged engagement, but for the first time in years, our casualty rates were lower than those inflicted upon the Zelax. And I don't know what Admiral Kuopan will tell you, but I saw the Zelax fleet as we left the planet. The human vessels are on another scale entirely. Their flagship was 6 of their kilometers long, twice the size of our biggest dreadnought. Their railguns can send absolute tons of firepower across vast distances in mere seconds, and their energy lances, their pulsars, and their ordnance are far beyond anything I have witnessed. I nearly cried with joy when their ships began the progenitor of all orbital bombardments upon the Zelax forces on the ground, turning the surface of the world to molten glass and denying those bastards any scrap of biological material. So, as my personal judgment and recommendation to this august body of the Confederation, I will be blunt and speak what I truly believe. Shut the thing up. We cannot win without humanity. This is a fact, not the opinion of a dustneck infantryman. They have technology and firepower beyond ours because for centuries they fought each other to the brink of annihilation. They have learned to wage war in ways we have barely dreamed of. They understand conflict, they understand battle, and they thrive in it. They have fought among themselves for millennia, and their unity has not made them weaker. And more importantly, they have a moral code that willed them to assist us in the first place. They didn't have a reason to help us, to drop from the sky and lose a dozen of their knights and hundreds of common soldiers to save us. They did it because, as Knight Amaranth himself said, it was the right thing to do. They value things like honor, duty, righteousness, and truth. They believe in ideals that are millennia old and have recently returned to the center of their society. They fight for what is right, and for those who cannot fight for themselves. We need their help. We need their ships. And we need every damned knight they have to win this war. They have armies of infantry trained for war and battle, hardened from countless conflicts, battalions of armor that make our own look pitiful, and from what I've heard and seen, their war striders are made to conquer continents. All of this is coordinated by their psionic gift, their unity, as they call it. They are a fearsome and war-tested engine of war, and they do not tolerate the shedding of innocent blood. They are eager for war against such monsters, to fight enemies like the Zelax, to engage in pure warfare against something purely evil and beyond reason. Maybe it is not enough. Maybe it never was. But for the first time since this massacre began, we made the Zelax hesitate. They have slowed their advance to the southern and northern rim, and their full frontal offense in the mid-rim has stalled. They are building fortresses and defensive networks on conquered and harvested worlds, something they had never done before, and bringing from dark space some sort of void stations. They fully expect us to go on the offensive, with humanity's aid, to strike back now that their momentum has been stolen and they have been proven beatable. I say, Senators, let's not disappoint. Call the reserves, fire up the furnaces of the war industry, open every arsenal we have, lift all restrictions on armaments for the Confederation, and give the humans all the aid we can afford, all the resources and information we have on the enemy. Let them do what humanity has a history of proving they excel at. What I saw during the weeks of transit back here to this august body. I read every history book on mankind, from their world wars to the eugenic crusades, to the unification of the moons, the Caperian Blitz, and the massacre of the Inner Belt. From the rise of the Hierophant's court to the Dragonfall and the Dragonrise battles. From the first war of Sol to the third. From the cry of the blood of Mars to the war of cinders. From the breaking of Luna to the defense of Earth. Killing monsters. Field Marshal Udique, during this Senate session, spoke for the inclusion of the authority of Sol into the Confederate Armed Forces during the 10th year of the Zelax invasion. After this, Lord Commander Cassandani Leonatos was given command of the Eastern Front, while her husband, Lord Cyrus Amaranth, took overall command of the Northern Rim. As history would prove, those were the most effective fronts and the only ones to eliminate a Zelax world form. P.S. The second part, more narrative-focused, is up and running. It's a bit long, but I hope you guys like it.